I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move to the approval of the agenda with the following amendments.
Mr. President, I move we approve the agenda with the following amendments. B1, additional certified and classified personnel actions for consideration, item number E3. B2, remove item C3, recognition of Megan Bernhardt, school nurse at Buffalo Jones Elementary and Plymouth Elementary School, recipient of the Outstanding Oral Health Volunteer Award. B3, removal of item F1, music department presentation.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for the approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, we'll move on to delegations, question and answers, public comments. We do have a public comment tonight. You get 5 minutes. Kristen Maston.
My name is Justin Maston. My daughter goes to Forest Good Middle School, and I'd like to discuss the incident with the SRO and the kid that got slammed into the ground. When parents drop off their kids to school, they are entrusting everyone in that building with their safety. It's an important responsibility. What took place, anyone that's seen that video, no one I come across could agree with his actions. Nobody. But what scares me more was the actions of the administration. The very first thing that was said about this was to stop recording or you'll be suspended. I don't know under what ground she was using that threat. They weren't breaking any rules by recording. Come to find out that a few days later, students were being told not to discuss it in the hallways. Again, what rule was being broken? This was a news event. This was on KSN. And you're asking the students not to discuss it amongst themselves. When I seen it, I just assumed that some sort of action would have been taken. Told my daughter, they'll probably find a no SRO. But when she come back, I think it was Tuesday, and said, Dad, he was in the cafeteria. And her and her friends are afraid. Why wouldn't they be? But again, what's more frightening is when students were recording something that they thought was wrong, the administration threatened them to stop. I just can't justify that in any way. We wouldn't ask them to do that about anything else. In fact, you go into Horace Good Middle School, through the front doors, and there's a poster that says something to the effect about bullying. You know, if you see something, say something. But that's not what they were told. In fact, they were told, be quiet. And now how am I supposed to send my daughter to school when that was the policy? I've always told her, you know, if you have an issue, take it to a teacher. Now, how am I supposed to tell her that when I can't be sure that that teacher's not going to take the correct action? Or at the very least, come to me with it. Because it was plain that the administration didn't want this discussed. Now it's, you know, not our place here today to discuss the SRO's actions. But at the very least, you guys can hold the administration accountable for telling these kids to not record it and don't discuss it. That's all I have.
Do we have anything else? Or, sorry, delegations, anything besides public comments? Okay. Planning to do anything with the election of this stuff? Or no?
Just bring it up and then Jackie's gonna confirm it.
Okay. So we'll go on to C1, election of the Board of Education officers, and consider a resolution to establish an election of school board officers.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the resolution. This resolution is to put in place president and vice president until July of 2024.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded that we consider a resolution to establish the election of our school board officers in July. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Move on to C2.
Recognition of the Board of Education and school board members. We're gonna have y'all come individually. Mr. Cessna's gonna take a picture, then we're gonna set the frames down, then take a unified picture with everybody, if that's okay. All righty. Individual picture first. Mr. John Weesey, President, current. Thank you for your outstanding service. Students of Garden City Public Schools.
Maybe if I can get them all with, standing together with the frames, we could do that. We'll get an individual too.
Again,
Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right.
I gotta get my face in there, Roy.
I know.
Randy Ralston, Mr. Randy Ralston, outstanding service to students of Garden City Public Schools, January 8th, which the date's even wrong now. Gosh, oh Friday.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, get over it. Kansas City Chiefs.
1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you,
Sir, thanks for your service. And Mr. Andy Firemeyer. Outstanding service to students, Garden City Public Schools, Garden City, Kansas. There you go. Appreciate it. Want to get a group one here in a minute.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right.
Thanks, thank you. Gentleman that was called Robin Bird County. Like that, on the record.
Pretty good.
Outstanding service, students of Garden City Public Schools. Thank you for your service. This is their initial board meeting, so there you go.
1, 2, 3. Thank
Senator
you.
Dr. Nation, Ms. Jackie Jiggett, Vice President, outstanding service to students of Garden City Public Schools, Garden City, Kansas. And Mr. Weesey and Ms. Jiggett are got 2 years under their belt, so they're
1,
veterans.
2, 3. Thank you.
Reverend Nathan Heck, outstanding service to students of Garden City Public Schools, Garden City, Kansas. There you go. Thanks, sir. Yeah, that's gonna be good.
1, 2, 3. All right.
And then Mr. Mark Hine. Certificate of recognition for outstanding service to students of Garden City Public Schools, Garden City, Kansas. There you go, sir. Congratulations.
1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, then get y'all guys in together. And get that going. You can set those frames out if you want. Or no, wait, they gotta have it.
I want one with all of them with the frames.
Good looking crew right there. My first meeting, I don't know.
Ready? 1,
In there, right?
2, yeah, I got it. 1, 2, 3. All right. And then just turn and set the frames on the desk or on the table. Then I just want one for our website with all of you together. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Last book is actually really, really informative. And we actually found a little bit more data that we, on the second edition, that go back with that book and a little swag. So.
Second edition ain't coming out for a while.
That'll be after Newton's tenure.
It's an updated version. It's an updated version. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for the recognition, Dr. Dominguez. We'll move on to correspondence.
No correspondence.
No correspondence. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. New business. The Board of Education is asked to consider and approve, Air Solutions software.
Yeah, they could be the soon.
Okay, do you guys want me to explain the process and why we're having to change softwares? Okay, all right. So, it was July, Jason and I were sitting down and we had a phone conference with our rep from our, I'll call it Horizon One Source in Solana. So Horizon One Source is our back of the house where we keep all of our inventory, do our grocery orders and all of that good stuff. Solana is our front of the house. It's the point of sales where we keep track of our free and reduced and the kids as they go through the line are point of sales. So we get on, it's in July and we get on and he goes, well, I suppose you heard. I'm like, no. Well, basically the company was bought out by a larger company. And the larger company no longer wants to focus on K-12. They want to focus more on military contracts and health services. So basically, at that point, that's when we started looking for some new software. As far as our search, what we did is I put out a listserv, like all of us directors in Kansas kind of have a listserv that we put out, and then I asked them what they were using, if they were currently using Solana Horizon, what their plan was. So in the search, we went and visited Dodge City. I visited Wichita Public Schools. Wichita Public Schools, even though they're on a grander scale, they're kind of set up like we are as far as our ordering and inventory. I visited them. They are actually currently using One Source, but converting to a different program. And then I also visit Hayesville, and then we also visited numerous schools by phone. So we had a standard set of questions that we asked. That we had a small committee. We put together some questions, and basically from there, we had online demos from the company. Actually one company, the company that we chose, we had two demos because it was one of those companies that I was like, oh, I'm not, I don't think this is for us. But then I did a demo by myself. And so then I called the community in and we did another demo, and that's the one that we chose. So the software itself, the benefits of changing, number one, we're eventually within the next year or two, we have to change. The one thing about the technology behind it, it is hosted on the cloud, so we will not have to host anything on our server. Our current software that we have for the back of the house, Horizon One Source, we actually had to move it to the company's server because we were having so many issues with communication. So the company is hosting it, but it's really not on the cloud, it's on their server. It's kind of a weird deal, and it's not very user-friendly. Reports are the reports that we get out of Solana right now. There's not a state report. It takes one of our gals probably all day just to compile the information for our claims that we have to send in every month. And this software actually has the Kansas report where we just push a button. And all the other thing that we really liked about this software is the reports were very customizable. It's focused solely on K-12, so it doesn't have other interest. Customer support seemed incredible. They were very friendly, very willing to work with us, willing to work around our schedule as far as the demo. We have a kind of a complex ordering system. So we have the warehouse, and then we have the high school and Horace Good that get orders. So that kind of throws in a wrench. So we have a central warehouse and then we have two central kitchens, basically. Then everybody else is standalone. So the standalone kitchens get all of their groceries and supplies from the warehouse. And the high school and Horace Good get their groceries from the vendors. So it makes ordering a little bit and keeping track of everything a little bit difficult. And they really have a comprehensive system on how we can do that. There's their parent portal is awesome, and they're still developing, doing more things with the menus. So we were very happy with that. Menu planning, it has, we have to do production records for the state. And we have to keep track of that, and that it is comprehensive on that program. Production, there's forecasting with automatic ordering. So that's the next level we want to get to. We always tried it with one source, but the communication issues, it was very difficult. And of course, nutritionals. They'll have all the nutritionals on there. So parents can go to the parent portal, pull up the menu, and then they can see what their kiddos are eating today. So now the fun part, the cost. These aren't cheap. Software isn't cheap, and support isn't cheap. This actually was the cheapest software. That wasn't by design. It was, first of all, we had to look at functionality and support. And when we compiled it, it was the cheapest that we could go by. One of the things is that we looked at the support. Support's always one of those things, those gotcha moments. When like software said, okay, yeah, for example, this one's a little over $17,000 a year, which is a lot of money. But that's something that software companies tend to raise to make up money. But they came in and we had Jennifer look at it. And one of the things, there was no cap on the maintenance. So they suggested 6%. We came back with 3%, and they went with 3%. So that's really, really good. So the maintenance, the yearly software, like I said, is a little over $17,000. Right now with the worthless, I'm sorry, I look at Jason because we've really been struggling. The software we have now is costing us over $35,000 for maintenance, and there's no support. They keep changing staff, and the support is not good. So anyways, the software that we're looking at is right under $24,000 to start up. And then, like I said, a little over $17,000 for annual maintenance agreements, which will not raise over 3% each year. That's in the contract. For the first 3 years.
Then we would renegotiate it up.
Yeah. So is there any questions? I know that's a lot in a short amount of time.
You were to purchase this, Tracy, when would you expect to go live?
Oh, we want to go live next year. So one of the things, it's going to take a lot of work. We're going to have to redo all of our inventory. We've had the system we had now since I've been here. So that's 25 years. There's a lot of data in there. We're just going to start new. So we'll have to enter all of our inventory in there. We'll have to enter all of our recipes and start setting up production. So it's going to take, I'll be pulling managers in to help. It's going to take a good 2-3 months to get the data entered into the program. The other thing this company is willing to do, I forgot to say, is they are going to allow us, once it's board approved, they'll send us the software, and this first 6 months is free. We will not owe anything until July. So that's kind of cool too. So we get kind of 18 months for 12. Did that answer your question?
That maintenance fee, is that annual?
That's an annual fee.
From the day we go live, it's not prorated.
Right. It's the day it'll start in July. So the maintenance, Jason, you can kind of go over a little bit more of what maintenance covers.
Yeah, you're looking at a lot of because it is going to be cloud hosted. A lot of that's probably going to be the cloud part of it. Outside of that will also include the tech support and any support to at least get us onboarded. Outside of that, it'll be the yearly. They're going to be helping with getting all the reports set up. So yeah, there's a lot of work. Like anything that they can help us with, they will. whether that's with importing or data and getting the system completely set up. So it's, I mean, they're gonna be helping us out quite a little bit.
One of the things that we really looked at, which Jason looked at, because it's over my head, is the integration between Skyward and the software, and it seems that it'll work pretty seamlessly. So our software has to talk to Skyward all the time, to bring in new students, and then our information, our free and reduced information goes into Skyward.
So I have two questions on the service or the maintenance fee. Does the 17,000 include the installation fee, or is there another charge for
No,
installation?
that includes the installation fee.
Okay, and then it's capped at 3% annually, so it can't raise, correct?
Right.
So what about the additional fees, like the online support? I mean, they're charging $185 an hour, they're charging $1,485 a day, plus hotel and all that. Are we protected from that? Or if we have issues and we have to call for support?
No, I would say we have wonderful technology, and we've never had to pay any extra on our software contracts, just because our technology department is able to troubleshoot a lot of it. They can get on, they send the instructions, which are included in the maintenance agreement, and then they can get on and do pretty much everything that we've asked.
Yeah. And with this software, as far as like travel or anything, hotel expenses, I really don't see that, because there's nothing with their setup that
Can't be done through the
that is gonna involve them coming out here.
And the other thing that's really nice about this software, there's a comprehensive free training guide already set up. So we can pull up training videos at no extra cost. They're already developed. Yeah, when I got, I had Roxy run me a list of, the software the school district's using and all the maintenance agreements. It's expensive. I'm in the wrong business.
But this is all in budgeted
Yes.
items, and
Yeah.
it's cheaper than what we're paying now. It's kind of
Yes.
win-win all the way across.
Yeah. It's one of those things that they're forcing our hand that we have to do. And we do have the money to support it. Actually, it'll be cheaper than the software that we're currently using.
Does anybody else have any questions for Josh or Tracy?
Can you talk about this Clover Connect and there's a part in there about,
About the fees, the parent fees.
it says, yeah, in addition to the Harris pricing, a separate agreement will be needed. With Clover, and then they've got some rates.
Right. We would go with the rates. We wouldn't take the Clover agreement. We would go with the percentage rate and like a credit card charge. So there's two options there, I believe.
What page are you looking at, Andy?
Right before the signature page of the contract, page 9 of 37.
Yeah.
Stripe or the Clover Connect, is that your message that you're mentioning?
Okay. So what we would do is we would select which one we would go with, and what we would go with would be the Stripe. So basically that's what we're doing now. We just charged the parents a percentage of the fees. Now this can be set up any way. For example, if a parent pays over $25, we can set that with the school district, we would absorb that fee. So you can set that up any way that you want, but that's just the fee that when the parents come in to pay for their meals, that's the percentage fee, the credit card fee. Yeah, and we would not go with the Clover Connect. We would go with the Stripe, what we're doing now.
So that's not every meal fee, that's when they.
Right. So it's just when you deposit money with a credit card, on the online payment. So if the parents did not want their fee, they could send the check or go to the school to pay that. So that'd be an optional.
Questions? Asking for action on this evening for us to either approve or deny. The Harris Solutions Triton agreement.
Mr. President, I'd make a motion to approve the purchase of the Harris Solutions E-Triton front and house and back of house software the amount of $28,876 with the annual maintenance fee of $17,341.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, that we approve the software. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Jason, I thank you very much. It will be a good change, so thank you very much.
We'll move on to F2. The Board of Education is asked to consider the approval and purchase of a new walk-in freezer for Gertrude Walker.
And that would be me too. So for a couple years now, we've been having a lot of troubles with the Gertrude Walker freezer door. It won't shut right. We've had it replaced, we've had new seals put on it. But what they found out that's happening is when it was installed, the floor wasn't properly, it wasn't properly installed right. So what happened is it's leveling, so it's sinking, so it's losing its seal. So basically, there's nothing that they can do except for replace the freezer. We solicited bids. Weber's was a little higher than the other ones, but their bids were incomplete. One manufacturer equipment vendor bid on the wrong stuff. And then the other one that we had was incomplete, and we weren't comfortable because we didn't have the specs for the condenser nor the specs for the structure. Plus, Weber's is local and they will install it for us. Any questions on that? Oh,
It's 94, wasn't it?
yeah, 1994
When that was installed.
was when that one was installed.
Supposed to be.
We're looking 10 to 12 weeks out after we order it. So it'll probably be, I talked to Ken Kerr, it'll probably be a summer installation. The other one that will probably need to be replaced within the next 5 years would be Alta Brown, because we're having some of the similar issues with that walk-in freezer. And that was there when I came, the district.
Questions for Tracy or Josh?
This, how are we paying for this?
Out of nutrition service funds. It is structural, but it can be removed, so my funds can pay for that. And we do have money budgeted for that purpose.
The administration is asking us to either approve or deny purchase of this walk-in freezer as well.
Move that we approve the purchase of a walk-in freezer for Gertrude Walker.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the walk-in freezer for Gertrude Walker in the amount of $25,700. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We'll move on to, thank you guys very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
We'll move on to F3, a boundary study, enrollment analysis by RSP.
So we have RSP here to kind of go over the beginning stages of the boundary study that we're doing. Colleen's going to bring up the PowerPoint, and then we're just going to turn it over and let them take over. Yep. Yeah, it works. You can use.
So like, is it scrolling?
No. It's like the clicker. Clicker's right here.
Okay. There's some nature.
It works.
Go to clicker. Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, board. All right, so my name, All right, my name is Jenna Wallace. So I presented with you guys back in December with Rob, where we did the overview of boundary criteria and just kind of setting the stage for what this process looks like. Today, I'm going to go through pretty briefly that pretty thick document that you guys got in late December that is the enrollment analysis. So walk through all the different data indicators that are kind of the forefront in the data that's going to be. So know that the PDF is pretty big. I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief, pretty high level. Slides are saying so that you guys kind of have the understanding of what they're saying, and then I can deep dive into any questions that you guys may have. With the final thing that we're going to do is kind of touch back on that boundary criteria, guiding principles, and lead into any sort of board direction you guys would like to give to the committee. So this report's broken out into these main 4 parts. So we're going to talk through enrollment and demographic of our students. We're going to talk about the housing and development relationship with students and leading into those projections. And then the next steps is kind of that boundary criteria conversation. All right, so you can see this 100,000 foot perspective here, where we do have the district at our secondary level decreasing slightly. So our elementary is projected to increase. We have some of our smaller grades moving into middle school. So elementary overall forecasted to increase, but that middle school and high school level expected to decrease over these next 5 years. We'll talk about capacity when we get into building level projections, because when I talk about enrollment, it's very different at each building level. So having that capacity of what the ideal students can be served in each facility gives a scope of what that projection really means for each facility. All right, so lots of maps in this report. We always start here with just our district boundary, familiarizing ourselves with where the school locations are at. Leading into our elementary boundary. So this is our current boundaries here. And we always provide down in the bottom left that full district view while the core map is zoomed into the city. But just knowing that when we talk about reside and attend projections for our different buildings, we're referencing our current boundaries. And then our intermediate boundary map and our middle school map. All right, so this map here that's on this slide is the RSP planning area. So this goes into the methodology and kind of the strategy behind the forecasting model. So knowing that the first thing we do in any of our school districts is we break up the school district into what we call planning areas. They're kind of neighborhoods, subdivisions, small building blocks that we analyze on a data level. So I believe we looked at around 350 planning areas for your district. So looking at if it's a multifamily, if it's a single family, does it have older homes, younger homes? What is the age of current students there? All leading into where we think each individual subdivision is looking at in their life cycle of students. So all of our demographics, all the historical data is going to come back to this geographic level, which also gives us the ability to say if we move this planning area from school A to school B, what does that do to that building's projections? What does that do to that building's demographics? So all the data is going to be thrown into this model here. So if you're a stats person, this may look cool. If you're not, this may look like gibberish. Just know that it is statistics. We're using all the recent data that we can get. All right, so one of our key signature slides here is we do pull our live birth data. So looking at sort of that market share of potential kindergartners in future years. So we're looking here, pretty stable live births these past 3 years. But over the last 10 years, you can see that decrease has started, which is pretty consistent. We're seeing that on a statewide and nationwide trend of less live births per year. Just knowing that of our Finney County live births, you guys are seeing around kind of 80 to 90% 5 years later enrolling into the district. So signaling that since the last 3 years have been pretty stable live births, looking at pretty stable kindergarten classes moving forward based on this variable. And then we look at our past enrollment by grade. So this is looking at our different trends between our grade levels. So some of the things that stick out, we do have a very large 11th grade class and more of a smaller senior class. So thinking about how just our different grades move through the system. And then thinking about how like our kind of 3rd to 5th grade is pretty small. So as they move into that middle school and replace those classes, kind of creating cohort change. So this is focusing in on if a class of 1st graders or maybe 2nd graders, what's the likelihood that they grow or do they decrease? So you can see some definite cohort loss throughout the years of some of these trends. You guys do tend to see that cohort boost at our grade configuration years. So as they move into middle school or they move into high school, you tend to see an increase of student counts and then some drop-offs between kind of inner those grade levels. The next thing that we looked at here is our just migration. So looking at new students coming into the district, you see this is broken out elementary, intermediate, middle, and high for these last 3 years. Orange bars are going to be new students each year versus the green is out migration. So I was a student last year and this year I've transferred private, parochial, out of state, something like that. So we do have this tendency to see more of an out migration than an in migration of our students, especially at that kind of elementary and high school level. All right, the next slide, we just focus here on our out-of-district enrollment or open enrollment, looking at what is that sample of students that you guys tend to see enrolling into the district that live outside of the boundary. So overall, the district has been seeing around 60 to decreasing to about 40 students residing out of the district boundary. So a very small sample compared to your total enrollment, with Holcomb School District being the largest contributor of that. But just something that we want to make sure that we're familiar with, knowing that open enrollment changes in the state of Kansas in this next year. So trying to kind of pinpoint what's your sample right now to see what that trends are. And I have a couple just kind of student maps here. So this area or this map is looking at a student count change. So looking at that subdivision level, the orange is where these subdivisions have been increasing in students the last 5 years. In green is where they have been decreasing. So moving out of inventory, not being replaced by new families, something like that. I'm trying to capture where all different neighborhoods are in life cycle. And then we just look at our total student heat map. So this is looking at all the pockets in the district, where is the hottest point of student proximity and density. So you can really see that down in the southeast corner is where we have some pockets of our hottest student density in the district. And then a density change map. So this is always interesting because it's kind of looking at not only just the change of students, but where they're moving in proximity to one another. So orange where we're seeing that proximity and density of students increasing over these past 4 years. So maybe new units popping up in that area. You can really see here, like along the east side of the district, having more of that density and student growth happening. So that goes through all of that, just kind of part 1, enrollment. Like I said, there's a lot more to each slide, but I'm just trying to give you guys that high level perspective. Development and growth, because we're really trying to build a relationship between students and housing products. So this first visual here is a correlation graphic. So looking at change between the years, trying to kind of look at what has that relationship historically been between our population, which is the green line, our building activity, which is the blue line, and our enrollment change, which is the red line. You can see over kind of these past like 8 or so years, population and building activity has been fairly positive year to year, but we have had those trends of enrollment loss kind of since 15, 16-ish. So kind of indicating that Although population's growing and we're seeing some housing types, we're not necessarily seeing those things lead to more students coming into the district. Right, these next two visuals are an analysis that we pull called a yield rate. So looking at our residential inventory, how many students do you typically see per 100 residential units? So this first table is single family. So just looking at your regular single family house in the district, and then we broke it out by elementary boundary. You guys typically see around 19 to 20 elementary students per 100 single family homes. And you can see that in 2019, that was at 21, and it's decreased to around 19. So our subdivisions have been yielding less students, at least in this 5-year scope. We also provide that for multifamily, so looking at apartments, townhomes, mobile home parks, all the other kind of housing products would be captured in this table, which is a more stable yield rate. So district-wide, seeing right around 21 up to 22 this year, students per 100 multifamily homes. Which that is pretty unique. Just working with a lot of school districts, we tend to see a lot more students from single family than multifamily. But in this case, you guys have a very equal yield rate between the two. So then just a couple quick visuals that go into our housing market. So this, based on that planning area, the average year built, red being where the newest units on average are in the district. And then we correlate that with median home value. So trying to identify what's the age and quality of the housing, and then what is that price point. Those are going to be kind of the two key things looking into the likelihood of new families moving in. So in this case, the red and green is the more affordable, and then orange and red being least affordable. And then our recent year built map here. So we can see that kind of that bundle of dots over on the east side being where we have the most new units in the district over these past 5 years. Pretty stable from 2019 to 2022 as far as new units built per year. 2023, so far our data says 7, but sometimes that's kind of just delayed with building permit of the year just finishing out. So, but probably around kind of that same 50 new units per year. And then this visual here just kind of goes through that development activity over time. So looking at decade by decade, our housing growth, you can really kind of clearly see here that kind of the 60s to the 80s is where we built a lot of our units. And then since then, pretty minimal housing growth as far as this kind of decade scope here. But it is kind of looking positive if you think of from 2010 to 2019, we built around 500 units, and then 3 years into this decade, we're at 200. So if you're keeping on pace year to year, it could be a larger decade of residential growth than what you guys have seen the last 20 years. Which leads us into how we do have this discussion with the city of looking at where residential activity is either happening right now or could happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So green is that current activity. So if you think of where those new dots were at on the east side of where that new developments are finishing out. Our yellow is where we have potential on a 5-year timeline. And then purple is more farther out, more on a 10-year timeline. And a lot of these 5 to 10-year areas are going to be contingent on, interest rates and supply chain challenges and the city willing to expand infrastructure and developers wanting to develop. So a lot of contingents on those areas, but we do want to identify them for what is potential for housing in the future. So all those areas are kind of concluded here on this table if you're more of a data person than a visual person, looking at around 770 potential units in current development stages. So they're either pushing dirt or they're actively being filled right now. And then overall in this kind of 10-year scope, looking at over 1,800 potential units to be added in the district if all those areas on that map do develop. And then last, we just want to note some of our economical development in the district, so empirical foods and that interest of more of a regional draw. for jobs and everything like that. So, do kind of factoring that into the analysis of more of that, just kind of regional scope of bringing students into the district. So that goes through all of that development, part two part. So just looking at that relationship between our students, and our housing developments. Leading into our projections here. All right, so this page 35 is probably your most important slide of the packet. So just looking at what is our enrollment looking at over these next 5 years. So you can see we go all the way back 10 years ago to kind of show this trend, with elementary being the red bars, middle school in blue, and high school in green. And for this visual sake, we do put elementary and intermediate together, but we do break that out in future slides. So overall, you can see here that we have the district decreasing by about 160 to 170 students over these next 5 years. Elementary, pretty stable to a slight increase of about 60 students. Middle school, an overall decrease of about 47, but if you look at that year-to-year change, we do have the district, the middle school kind of coming down and then coming back up as more of those grade levels make their way through the system. And then most of that forecasted decrease is at the high school. So how I said, like 11th grade and 10th grade are your largest classes in the district. As they exit and graduate the system, they're not going to be fully replaced, which really creates a pretty natural just enrollment loss at the high school. So this next slide is what we provide here of, I know it's really small on that TV, but going into what our enrollment projected by building is. And this is where we'll break up between all of our elementary, intermediate facilities. So there's a lot of information on this slide. We'll kind of go through what each building is. We'll talk what that functional capacity is provided by the district. And then we show enrollment for the past 3 ways, which is our reside enrollment. So that is how many students physically are in each boundary. They're geocoded, that's where we think, and projected, that's how many students would reside in the boundary. And then attend is how many students actually attended that facility. And then that top font, which is the purple, is a subset of reside/attend. So this is how many students resided and attended each building. And we provide that to you guys because depending on kind of your purpose of looking at these projections, you would want to look at it different ways. For boundaries, we want to focus on that reside enrollment because when we're moving an area in a neighborhood, we're assuming there that everyone in that area that we're moving is now going to attend the new school. So we want to focus on where the students physically reside right now, and then in a potential boundary change where they would now reside. That attend enrollment is more of your realistic, how many students, if everything stays the same, where we potentially think each class and each grade is going to kind of trickle out. Because we know that we've got intra-district transfers, and so, you know, my mom's a teacher in this boundary, so we go to that school, or program changes that do impact where students actually go to school versus where they reside. So we kind of give those 2 numbers. So if you're based on, in case of boundary discussion versus a programming discussion, have a number that's more accurate to that talking points. So the last thing on these tables is that shading, which just illustrates a utilization percentage of that functional capacity. So the green is indicating that the enrollment is projected under 70% of that functional capacity. So a lot of room in those buildings. And then the orange is where we're over 100% of the functional capacity here. So like for Jenny Barker Elementary, if everybody who resided in that boundary went to that school, you guys would be considerably over that functional capacity in that school versus everywhere in the green has room to increase in their student counts. So we also provide this for our secondary facilities here. So no orange as far as nothing over that 100% utilization for our secondary facilities. So knowing that it's not necessarily capacity challenges that would be indicating any boundary changes, but more just balancing our enrollment and trying to program our facilities at a better utilization. overall, the district has plenty of space to accommodate for that elementary growth and kind of looking at that decrease at our secondary levels with all kind of a district-wide of around 60% utilization of our capacity. So that goes over kind of the high level of the enrollment analysis. Any questions on any of those slides or anything I can go through a bit better to help you guys understand this report?
Functional capacities of the buildings, how's that determined?
Yeah, so we were provided that by the district, so I might prefer it if anybody has a kind of better explanation of how we got that number.
Yep, so we actually sent several different calculations. So functional capacity is the square footage of the buildings, the number of classrooms, broken down by the ratio of students that are ideal for that grade level.
So that would be like the maximum student classroom size per classroom, filling the whole building.
So going through and really pulling the floor plans, looking at exactly how many classrooms, how many students we can put in those classrooms per the board policy, and then making those calculations based on what that school can then house.
That's what I was gonna say. It's all really was based on board policy numbers.
Okay, we'll make one more of that.
Go ahead.
So currently, when we're sitting at this, particularly, I'm just thinking about the elementary school levels, we're sitting at 60%. Do we just have small classrooms or we have empty classrooms?
Yeah, 50 classrooms.
You have rooms that aren't being used, not class sizes that are below, okay.
How many buildings are at 60%, would we say?
9 out of the 11.
Yeah, 60% or lower.
Elementaries. I'm kind of focusing on the elementaries there.
Okay. We have one that's over and two that are running on. That chart tells us basically we're running right.
Yeah, I kind of
70%.
I categorize basically Jenny Barker as over, and then Plymel is pretty close to high, and then the others are pretty comfortable ranges. So we have a total of 11 elementaries. Yep. VO is on the higher end.
Just for a question, what does RSP recommend as far as like 80% capacity? What do they recommend?
Yeah, we normally say around kind of that 80 to 85 mark because that gives you guys the flexibility that if you have a large class size coming in, you have the available classrooms to maybe add a section or do something that accommodates it. But anything kind of less than then may get hard for class size and staffing if that utilization is pretty low. It just create more of that underutilization challenges of trying to create an equitable experience between your buildings. It's just, it's kind of just a target number. It definitely differs by the district.
So like some of these schools like Jenny Barker, its reside number is way higher than the attend number. So are those other students just assigned to moved to other buildings in the district, or do we?
At the beginning of the year, we contact the families, and it's all based on enrollment date. So the last one to enroll would be the first one to be moved, and so we do over capacity transfers. And that's really, I think, what kind of started this whole process was, Jenny Barker and VO in some grades too was over
Back
capacity.
during our presentation, when you were talking about bringing in RSP to do the boundary study, a lot of it was, a lot of the OCTs, the overcapacity transfers were from Jenny Barker. Jenny Barker was definitely the majority, so we kind of presented that information to really quantify the number of transfers and the impact that it has. We'll have to resurface that data and bring it back up.
No, I remember you mentioning it. Thank you.
So that's what I really have for this, just enrollment analysis. So I know it's a lot of data, but it really just kind of creates that solid groundwork for any of the committee members to know that when we're looking at projections, it's all based on all this data. The next things that I have is just looking at this boundary process and kind of giving you guys the opportunity to set any kind of ground rules or guide marks that you would like the committee to know, so that when we go and do that work and we go out to the public, when we come back to you guys, it fits that scope and you guys feel comfortable with where the plan is going. So I know when we met in December, we talked through some guiding principles and we talked through that boundary criteria of prioritizing our different criteria. So we can kind of talk through that first. I just want to kind of walk through our guiding principles. And this is supposed to be more of just a list of what is sort of on the table for the committee, kind of creating that sandbox for them to work in. So these are more of RSB's kind of templated guiding principles that we see in a lot of processes. So definitely we just want to read through those and make sure you guys feel comfortable with utilizing those moving forward with the public and with the committee. Just kind of high level, we're just talking about like, this is for a district-wide long-range planning. So we're looking duration of boundaries, trying to create a long-range scope. We're trying to provide a better educational opportunities in our school. We are going to look at those neighborhoods and those planning areas. So we account for as a neighborhood as a whole, as that moves around the district. And then we're anticipating any future change. So that's what that looking at growth areas or age of students between our boundaries. And then we did add this one kind of sub bullet point based on that past conversation where we may consider a non-contiguous kind of island if it's based on those new growth areas. So that was something that we added based on our December conversation. Our boundary process could include elementary, intermediate, and middle school level. And then we're trying to effectively utilize our district resources. We want our boundaries to be natural and man-made boundaries. So you don't look at it and you're like, what the heck is that? It kind of makes some sense visually. And then we want to consider just future ideas of our building utilization and grade configuration. So kind of just a broad scope to let the committee play with that, unless you guys want to change any of those wording. And then we added in here that to consider the impact of our open enrollment policy, because that is interesting, just knowing that that policy change is going to happen between now and next year. So trying to consider that with the committee, if there's different ways to look at that policy and prepare for it in any of our facilities. And then that last bullet point, just saying that any student options or grandfathering policy would come back to you as the board for any final decision. It wouldn't come as a committee recommendation. So I'm gonna pause there. Any thoughts on guiding principles? Anything we want to scratch or rewrite or add?
Things that I think I've thought about on this would be, I don't know if we want to add it, but just to be into consideration would be to disrupt the least amount of students as possible through the process.
What do we have for, do you have any sort of rules about, I feel like the schools that are in town saying if you live within this certain distance, or if you live outside this distance from a building, you get bused. If you don't, like, what is the rules associated with that?
To qualify for busing, it's 2.5 miles from the building. Unless like I know at VO, you know, when you go to the trailer park on the other side of the highway, we don't want the kids crossing busy highways. And so there'll be closer distances for safety reasons, but yeah, policy is 2.5 miles. So,
So if they live on the other side of a major highway, they generally get bused, or a major road
yeah.
like Jenny Barker or bypass or something like that. Okay. I think another thing that I would like the committee to take into consideration is there are two country schools, and there are people who have built homes in those areas out in the country that I would like to preserve. You know, them being able to go to the country school. I know we have some boundary or some stuff that's more on the east side of town that is going north that may be affected opposed to the folks that move out like that. And when you, when boundaries or when kind of capacities are set, I think you said 80 to 85 is kind of the ideal percentage of a building. When people want to apply to re-boundary this and people still want to apply to go back to whatever school they were in before or such, what is you think would be the rule or say, okay, well, once we hit this percentage margin, we're not going to accept transfers into that building.
Right,
Do
well.
we, I mean, or do we have a rule we're following currently of how we capped?
So typically, and I don't remember what we processed, it was over 200 transfers that we processed, parent requests that we did this year. And we typically hold on to those until, this year I think was the first year we got them done earlier than we typically do. We wait until we kind of get through the enrollment process and make sure that, you know, families have had an opportunity to enroll in their boundary school. And then we look at those and we did it around the middle of June. I think this year is when we started looking at that. And if we had room at that point, then we let the parents transfer into those positions. We're gonna have to look at the timeline a little different moving forward, just because of the new out-of-district policy that that the state passed. So, you know, if we're taking out-of-district enrollments, we're gonna have to know where our kids are gonna land first before we can open that up to out-of-district. So that's something that I need to work on. You know, we're gonna have to work on is the timetable for that, because that's gonna impact a lot. So we wanna make sure that our kids have a place before we take, you know, legally we have to take those kiddos, but we don't have to take them if we have our own kids. So
The harder piece to that is personnel wise,
yeah.
shifting personnel around to those different buildings. If you guys know teachers, they get pretty comfortable in their buildings, and then, you know, if we move a whole bunch of kids into a building just because it has room, that means we're gonna have to shift teachers over into that building to create more classes, which means, you know, displacing teachers from places they may have been working for quite a while.
And a caveat to that is we, before the end of May, we traditionally see the teacher requests. I want Johnny and I want June to go with me as far as their personal students, and we usually honor those requests. We do that before the end of school.
Their own kids.
Their own personal children. Yes.
So we do give them preference.
Yeah. There needs to be some benefit to being an employee of USD-457.
As long as we have room, they're the first ones that we approve.
Is Pierceville considered out of district, or are they considered out of district?
Yeah, they're in the
Pierceville
Eagles-
is.
they're in the
Eagles,
Eagles
isn't it?
boundary. I'm pretty sure.
Usually,
Hmm?
don't let the name confuse you. You're still Plum Hill.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's why it's not called Fisher Pine Road, it's just called Pine Mill now because of that.
Well, I know Jenny Worker had a lot of kids that come in from Pierceville. And I kind of was like, it's
Yeah, I think the
the
boundary
most
line is,
crowded school.
the boundary line is right over in that area somewhere. I couldn't tell you that off my head, but I know it's right over in that area somewhere. Because we've had kiddos where we get enrollment and we pull their address, and if they lived on this side of the street, they would be ours, and if they lived on that side of the street, they would be Eagles, and so they would enroll, and we tell them, no, you need to go to Eagles and enroll because you live on the wrong side of the street.
Any other thoughts from other board members? I have adding a note about disrupting the least amount of students, and then having some sort of accommodation from the county schools and providing that. Or do we feel comfortable with that?
Well, typically in this process, when you go through this committee, like, what's the outcome? Is it generally like a few different scenarios presented to the board to consider? Like, here's taking it in this direction compared to, I mean, what are we gonna kind of see at the outcome of all these committees?
Yeah, so most of the legwork is gonna be at the committee level, so they're gonna go through sort of that first initial draft concepts, talk through pros and cons, what they wanna change, leading into, normally when we go out to public input, we recommend having probably 2 concepts, so we don't overload people with differences, but 2 kind of strategically different concepts to consider. And then at that point, leading into any maybe potential revisions that were based off that public input, and then coming back to the board. Sometimes we see if both concepts are like, pretty good, and we do see a lot of support, we'll take both for you guys to have the decision between, or if it is really narrowed to just one, it's more just, here's the recommendation of that boundary plan. I've seen it both ways. It kind of depends on how that committee and the public work through the boundary concepts. And we can really accommodate, so if we would or say we just want the recommendation, or we do want the options between the 2, we can work with the group to accommodate that request.
Yeah, I think my personal thoughts on this are, it's surprising to see that we're using so low building utilizations on average, that we're down at like 60% marks. I mean, my thought is I like these guiding principles. I honestly don't want to put too many constraints on this process, because I think there could be some swings in the direction that this could go. And I'd like to see those really vetted out, and the pros and cons of each one of those really critically looked at, and then getting, feedback from the community, because I think this is a big change, potentially could be a big change. It's going to be a big change for anybody affected. And so I'd like to be, kind of like to see, let those conversations go in those broader directions, and really kind of see how these, what they come back with, and what the community thinks about it, not box this in too much on the front end.
Who's on these committees?
So 3 board members are available to be on there. District leadership team, principals, we have teachers, we have business partners / community partners, parents. Who am I missing?
That's it.
Did I hit it all?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's
basically
it's
the
about
district
50
site
people
council.
total.
What percentage of the committee is actual parents?
Our parents, I have 8 to 10, I think, on there. Some staff also oh, that's over and above what staff that have kids in the school district, so we really looked for people that fill multiple roles, so that you could really have a wide range of experience on district site council.
Was that open?
Oh, department heads, I forgot that, admin, like all of our department heads, or representation from all of our, departments will be on there.
Is that an existing site council or was this project opened up to new?
We renewed the district site council and kind of pulled together a new team. Some people were existing from the old and a lot of new, just to get some new voices at the table when looking at boundary committee. So we kind of sought out some new membership on district site council since it has been a little bit since we've used them last.
Based on what you just heard, is that pretty standard for most school districts?
Yeah.
We feel pretty comfortable? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I kind of agree with Andy, where instead of just the committee bringing a recommendation to the board, I'd like them to bring maybe like their first, second, and third,
Okay.
recommendations, so that the board could be able to look and review all of it.
So the next thing that I have is just looking at that boundary criteria. So we went through this in a lot more detail in that December meeting where we kind of described and did examples of these 10 criteria. So these are very different than our guiding principles. So the guiding principles are kind of like that framework, the sandbox, what's at in the discussion table. Our boundary criteria really help the committee and the public understand why maybe option A boundary is better than option B or vice versa. So they're all different lenses to look at a boundary map and say, I like this because maybe it has the best demographic balance and it keeps our neighborhoods intact versus the other option may impact the least amount of students, but keep our projected enrollment under capacity. Because they're complicated. Boundaries are really complicated and there's a lot of data that goes into each one. So depending on that lens, a different option may look better than some others. So what we typically have is have the board prioritize that criteria by just picking their top 3. We could either do individually or as a group to try to give the committee and the public the understanding that the boundary concepts at the end are trying to capture these top 3 criteria the best. Because it may be not that they're not all important, they're all going to be analyzed and addressed in some manner. But if we get to the recommendation or the 2 final concepts that come back to you, which concept better addresses your prioritization that you guys set? So I know the district did some staff outreach to kind of help this discussion. So looking at leadership and then principals and then the cabinet of how they approach this question. I'm just choosing your top 3 criteria. So leadership, it was a kind of 3-way tie between our feeder system. So schools moving into that next grade level together. Fiscal considerations, operational. So looking at that, what's the staffing of the building? Are we creating more operational costs? And then our projected enrollments, those 3 being, they all scored on that number 1 or prioritization. And then when they asked the building principals, the top criteria was our projected enrollment. Number 2 was transportation considerations. And then there was a tie for 3rd place between demographics, fiscal operational, and students impacted. And then cabinet, when asked them, out of those 12 responses, we had number 1 as our projected enrollment, number 2, duration of boundaries, and a tie for third, which between demographics, fiscal considerations operational, neighborhoods attacked, and transportation. So there was 4 criteria that all kind of got that third place mark from the cabinet. So we wanted to give you guys that information, just trying to see where some other heads are at. But then really hear from you guys as far as if it's maybe a collective, or we can even do kind of like what they did with this voting poll and have everybody just kind of write their top 3 and I can aggregate that together.
I'd like to do this, if you want to go individually and give your top 3, you can do it that way. And then we can basically summarize our data like they did the principals and cabinet and leadership teams.
That makes the most sense.
This is a percentage out of the board. This is there.
Okay, so I was just have some note cards. I'll just pass these out. You guys want to write your top 3 and then I can kind of do the math on my computer and come back probably after some other agenda items.
Are they all listed on this?
Oh, they should be on that slide, yeah. That was kind of it.
I think it's the same thing.
Slide 45, Jackie.
Okay, we just don't have the transportation on it.
Okay.
We don't have transportation and, the cabinet one? That's the one we missed.
Oh, it's in the minute, Mike. Go back to the minute, Mike. President.
Looking for this.
It's in the minute with Mike, right?
So it's
Goes into everything that I have to present tonight. Just knowing, so this is our process of what we're going to lead that committee through. So our first committee coming up in the beginning of February, and then we do have public input coming back to you guys. I think in April for that final decision. So any other thoughts or considerations you would like us to convey back to the committee about this process? I'll get these calculated while you guys do the next agenda items, and then I'll kind of say those results.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Step 4, elementary school HVAC, Shane Furrow.
Good evening. until about 3 o'clock, I was prepared to come in here and talk to you about contracting it, the HVAC project at Abe Hubert and or maybe Plymouth, but in a phone call, right about 3 o'clock, that all changed. So, I'm at least here to tell you what we've done this year and kind of what we're projecting, what we're planning on going forward. So, like I said, this last year, we've been designing the HVAC system, for Abe Hubert. The project documents went out to all bidders, October 12th. The bid date was set for November 16th. We were hoping to present that project then to you for approval in the December 4th meeting. We had one bidder on November 16th, which is unfortunate. In discussions with that bidder prior to the bid opening, he felt his number was extremely high. Should it be well outside our budget, he would have preferred that we didn't open it, so it'd been public knowledge. Should we need to rebid the project, then that his number would be out there and the other bidders would know what that is. So we honored his request. This obviously stalled our project, costing us valuable time. We regrouped with our designers to see what we could do to value engineer the project, come up with ideas that we could cut out of the project. We did that in a very short amount of time. We come up with a list of VE options. Up until 3 o'clock today, we were still evaluating those. However, in communication with our engineer and our equipment consultant, the project continues to be well outside of the budget that we set for the project for this year. So in an attempt to still complete a project, I asked our engineers to finish the HVAC design for Plymouth. Here back in 2022, both Plymouth and Jenny Barker, we had started those designs and then put them on hold. We started the ESCO projects, the 5 sister projects, and then also because of the deteriorating system at Abe Hubert, we pushed Plymouth and Jenny Barker back. At that time, those designs were 70% complete. So it was easy to pull those off the shelf, try to finish one of those up, and that's what they did. So they did finish the design on Plymouth, and we had sent that out to a couple vendors in order to try to contract something for this fiscal year. And unfortunately, in that same conversation today, indications are that project is going to come in well over what we originally had planned as well. So right now, I'm in a deep dive into the 2025 project planning for our long range team. It's my plan to dive into both of these HVAC projects as well as Jenny Barker to see what we can do moving forward to make them happen in a physically responsible way. There are additional government funds available if we reconsider our design for both Plymouth and what we did at Abe Hubert. With the information late this afternoon, I'm just not sure what those two systems look like. There are some options in front of us. So, and I just haven't had a chance to reevaluate. HVAC budget wise, I need to spend some money to keep the Abe Hubert system up and going. It's failing daily. Right now, we've got several fan coil units down. We've got valve problems. We've got pump problems. Our maintenance supervisor has done a heck of a job here the last 12 months, just trying to keep that system up and paddling. But unfortunately, obviously with the cold weather right now, it's making it much more difficult. So I am going to have to spend some money to keep that system going. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to recoup those costs later. But then the remainder of the HVAC budget for this fiscal year will just roll over in our capital funding and be available for the projects next year. I will be presenting all those the projects we're doing this year and the ones that are planned for the fiscal year 2025 in next month's meeting, along with the long range plan. Any questions or comments? Got going HVAC wise.
I'm assuming the no bids is because of the timeframes.
I don't know what I don't know what the interest. We had a lot of interest in the ESCO projects. I think, that there's just some timing things going on. A lot of contractors had already filled up their 2024 summer schedules, I think. So therefore we got one, bid from a local contractor here. There were actually two that showed up to the pre-bid. And then here of late, we had another one that was interested. But unfortunately still over our budgeted amount. So we're not gonna be able to make that work. So,
Do you think by rolling it into the next fiscal year, we'll be able to get on the calendar soon enough?
that's the plan. We talked to the engineer today. You know, the plan is to reevaluate these systems and then throw them out like late spring here, for next year's projects. So we can get some competitive numbers. And the fact that we've got these three projects already designed, if we throw out a different type of design for these three buildings, and we'll be able to compare the two against each other for each building, hopefully get some competitive numbers and then look at maybe some government funding and what might be available there too. So.
Could you speak to the board, just a little bit about supply chain or even the cost of some of the equipment? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it sideways? What do you see in the future?
Well, it never goes down. So as you know, the cost escalations, we've been evaluating the ESCO projects, which are the same type of design we used in the APU design, which are the VRF systems, much like what we did in this building, along with a DOAS, kind of a makeup air system. And those projects were bid out in 2022. There seems to be a significant jump in costs from 2022 to what we're seeing today. So, as far as supply chain, there are some longer lead items when you get into some electrical gear, some of the bigger rooftop units, some of the specific DOAS units. But we were kind of looking at those as when we had to table our bid there in November. We went back to our equipment suppliers and just said, hey, what are our lead times? Are we still, if we hold this off, if I bring you a contract today or tomorrow, and we approve it in February, are we still able to get it in this summer? And they were confident that we could, especially at Plymel. Plymel is much smaller systems. Obviously, they're a little more readily available than some of the systems that we had at APU. But anyway, long story short, we weren't going to have any issues if we took action, say at the February 4th meeting. We wouldn't have issues on supply. Cost escalations, it's going to be higher. We looked into just a little bit on purchasing equipment for those buildings now, and saving maybe the escalation in costs. The issue there becomes a little bit with warranty, when that warranty starts. Is it, it's 18 months from when you take delivery, or 12 months from the date that, it's installed, that kind of thing. And I just didn't want to give up that warranty time. So did that answer your question, John?
Yeah, I think I knew the answer to it. I just wanted you to speak to the board just a little bit about it. So, thank you.
Any questions? Thoughts? Thank you.
Appreciate the update. Thank you. The next item is Board of Education Committee assignments. Get a sign up sheet for this.
In your orange folder there, there's some descriptions of the.
I think that was in our board packet as far as what the committees were and a brief description. So I will pass this form around. Sign up for. While we're doing that, I think we'll move on to board open discussion.
We want her to do.
Oh, yes.
She's supposed to.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, so for a tie for first, was fiscal operational considerations. And then students impacted, those both have the same score. And then criteria 2 would be projected enrollment. And then number 3 would be duration of conference. So fiscal operations / students impacted, and then projected enrollment, duration of boundaries. You guys feel comfortable with that? You guys.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move to board open discussion.
We'll start. Yes,
Yep.
welcome to all the new board members. And I think hopefully tomorrow we'll get back to school. We're going to school tomorrow, right?
You don't know yet.
Jack, you're gonna get the text message.
I know. There's no school?
Tomorrow's the worst day it's been in a whole week.
Where's the teenage daycare?
At Drew Cohen's house.
Actually, I'll take her kids.
Welcome to the new board members. I didn't get to speak to you when I got it. Glad you're here. Appreciate again, everybody's hard work. I understand that these committees and stuff they take a lot of time and a lot of commitment, but I think there definitely is value to them and I trust that people will really take it serious and hopefully come together with a good project and move the district forwards.
I want to welcome you guys also. Great to have you here. Looking forward to serving on board with you. Yeah, it's kind of been a rough week or two with all the weather and everything, and you know, facilities work really hard, all the snow to clear and everything. But yeah, just excited about the boundary study in this process, and just to kind of see what we are going to hear from community members. And then those that are not only on the committee, but just when we take it out to the general community. But I'm just really intrigued to see. Hope we get a lot of participation. Had a few people talk to me about it, and I've encouraged them to discuss it and talk to me. So I hope we get good feedback through the whole process. So.
I am excited and nervous. I've got a lot to learn, but I'm in this for the long haul.
I'm excited to be here. I think this boundary study is going to be extremely important to this school district. It's going to be interesting to see the options that they come up with for us to consider. So.
I appreciate all the work that's been done in the past on the history of everything that's going on. I appreciate the reports and learning the new system here and getting used to that. Definitely appreciate the leadership and what they've done, and excited to see where we go from here and make this the best school system in the state. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I would like to join my other board members and I want to welcome Robin, Mark, and Nathan to the board. I do agree with Andy a little bit. You know, this January has been extremely challenging. I think Kansas has been pretty mild the last few years, and I think Kansas has reminded us that we can have a good solid winter here. But the forecast looks good, so I'm hopeful that you know, maybe after tomorrow we can get back to normal and get our students back. I think all the students want to be back. The teachers want the students back. I think we want to get the second semester rolling and move our students forward educationally. So hopefully that will happen. And I do agree with the rest of the board members on this boundary study. I think it's going to be insightful, and I think there'll be a lot of good data brought to us, and it'll be fun to work through that process and hopefully have a good recommendation and something that we can put together that will have our boundaries last for a while and we'll utilize our buildings the best that we can and, it'll be the best education for our students. So that's obviously the most important at the end of it. So that's all I got this evening. Dr. Dominguez?
Yes, want to thank the board for their service, but welcome the 3 new board members for sure. Our motto is engage, enrich, empower. We definitely want to engage, enrich, empower everybody. As badly as we want our students back in school, we absolutely do want that. Safety is a big concern. The rooms are really, Mr. Farrow stepped out. I did want him to say a little bit more about the room temps. Actually pretty cold in quite a few of our buildings, not as warm as we would really like them to be. And if we get to school safely, you want to be able to stay warm, and some of them were frigid today, to be frank. And then tomorrow with wind chill, by mid-morning, we think it's going to warm up. We definitely want to get everybody back in school, but some excitement for sure with the site-based committee, being able to work with RSP and the board to move the district forward. And that is traditionally a 10-year projection as far as the growth. So we definitely want to use our buildings, use them to the capacity to actually empower our students and our community to be successful. So thank you all for your support and thank you for the commitment. And I'm just glad to be here for sure.
All right, with that, the next Board of Education meeting will take place on February 5th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Educational Support Center. Move on to adjourn.
President, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
I
All opposed, same sign.